Okay, so now that we have some basic idea about getting data from the model, why don't we also look at how to show this thing in a little more interesting way? So there's one more thing which we need to address, which is, if you see in the faker, we have hard coded the user ID, right? So I'll come over here, database, factories, and this. So we have hard coded the user ID, but we want a way for us to log into the application, and then the application should take our own user ID when creating a story, right? So authentication is something which we need to work on, and Laravel does come by default with an authentication package. So the moment you run the command php artisan make auth, right, we will have certain changes. We will have a layouts directory which has app.blade.php. It has quite a few things, including a menu. It will, inside our http directory, have auth. Inside that, it will have login controller, register controller, and quite a few things. And the most important part, if we now hit refresh, we see a login and a register form. So why don't we create a user so that we can log in? Okay, and this is where Seeder comes into picture, right? So go into the database. We already have a database Seeder file which says user table Seeder. It doesn't call it, it is commented. So why don't we create that? PHP artisan make Seeder user table Seeder, and I'll uncomment this, hit save, and here we will create two user for the application. We have name, email address, and our password, which is going to be password. We'll create one more. Let this user be. So now if I do php artisan migrate, refresh, seed, it will get through all the migrations again, and my stories are clear. However, I have two new users now, so which means I can log in. And now because that I can log in, we can see inside, let's say we go into our views directory, home, right? We have some details about the user. For example, my user ID is 1. My email is reachme@amitavroy.com. So, these are some things which we will get out of the box. This really saves a lot of time in any of the application that you're trying to build. And now we will quickly create a basic form, okay, in Laravel, so that we can create certain stories. So I'll just create the form and then I'll come back instead of, oh, maybe not. Let's do it piece by piece. I'll show it to you first time, and then later on we can skip those parts. So story add.blade.php. Okay. Now, because we have now a layout file, which is this, if you go through this, okay, we have our nav bar. We have certain things like if the user has if the user is logged in, okay, for example, if this is guest, I get these two links, else I get the logout button, quite a few things. And then in here it says yield content. Now yield is basically a way for this blade file to know that content is going to come from some other blade file, and I need to display that. So whenever we have this kind of an thing, what we can do is we can say extends, and it will extend layouts.app. That's our folder structure, and it says it will yield content, so which means I can create a section called content. I'll do end section, and in here, because we have a bootstrap, so div container, div row, div call sm12. Okay, and we'll create a form. The action for now, let's say it is, method will be post. We'll create a route. Why don't we create a route inside our web.php? Okay, this is home, this is stories. We'll get this down. We'll have story, post, function name will be store, and we will name this route as story.save. Sorry. Okay, now what are names? So let's say I have a form which says, I can inside Laravel do something like story. Okay, and let's quickly add the CSRF. I'll also have an input. Name will be, let's say, title. Okay, and we have a button. Let's say save. And let us, okay, we are not showing this route anywhere, so I'll create two posts, routes. One is /story /add, and let's say this is add, right? So we'll add this method. No, I'll call this create. I think the add will be a little misleading, so create is our method name. Stories controller. In here we will return a view again. Okay, and this time we will return this story add. So inside stories we have story add, right? Hit refresh. Once we see our route, story add. So we have a form which is being rendered. This is fine. However, to define the post route, so store, come over here, and we create the form function. In here I will get the request instance. Okay, I know I want that. Okay, and for now I will just return whatever is coming as request, post request. So now this is the form, and I am posting it to the URL story. So which means if I hit refresh here and I type anything else, you can see I'm getting the token and I'm getting the title. That is fine. However, my form is now referencing directly to the URL, which means at some point if I want to do something like this, if I submit the form, I get a 404, which is a problem. So to save you from these kind of refactors, what we can do is, instead of referencing a URL, we can say route with the name story.save. Now whatever we do with our URL, it doesn't matter, because I'm referencing the route name which is this. I can change these URLs whenever I want to, and nothing is going to have, nothing is going to create a problem for me. Similarly, there is a technique by which we can change the routes as well, which I very commonly do. I have seen this done by the Spatsy packages a lot, which is, so let's say I'll do stories controller class, oops, okay, and I'll mention create, okay, and if I hit refresh, things should be working fine, right? So this is one more syntax which we can use to use things. The advantage of this particular way is that if you change the name of the controller, let's say you refactor anything, I mean, this will automatically get changed, right? So if you're using an IDE, for example, I many times use an IDE, these kind of refactors will help you. Okay, so let's see, I'll go to my migration. I need the title, I don't need the body. I need a story type, user ID, epics, right? Okay, so for now, why don't we do one thing? We will cheat a bit in terms of certain things. The story type, I'll hard code it here. Select. Okay, so I'm saying that this is the drop down, and if I now hit refresh, this is title, this is an enhancement. I hit save, and I get these three things, which means now inside my controller, okay, I can start looking at saving these things. Okay, before we save anything to the database, obviously we will need to do certain kinds of validations on the kind of data which is being coming from the user, right? And that's where we will use the validation method available with Laravel. Okay, so because the controller is being extended, right? This thing is being, this contract is being available to us, validates request, and that is the reason I can do this validate. I need to send the request, and then the second argument is the set of rules. So the first key is going to be title. This is similar to what the name is. Whatever is the name here will be referenced here, and then we have rules. So I'm saying this is required. How do I know about this validation rule? You can go to the documentation, search for validation. Okay, there's a lot of ways you can write your validations. However, I will let you know about the existing rules. So it says required, required if, required unless, and there are tons of rules which you can use. I would suggest you go through almost every one of them, because at certain point I'm sure you're gonna need one of them for your requirements, so you should be aware what is possible. So I'm saying it is required, and the minimum length should be at least 3. Okay, I cannot have just a title with 1 character or 2 characters, so the minimum length is 3. Story type is required as well. Okay, for now this is fine. I'll save this as post data. Okay, and then we can say $story is equal to story create, will pass post data. Now we can do this. However, if we remember, we need, what do we need? We have title, these 3 are nullable, so we can skip this. We are passing user ID and epic ID are required. So why don't we, for now, add the user ID. So post data user ID. We get the user ID from the request object as well, and also we can do auth data. So both are possible. We can do like this, okay, and this will include the illuminate support facades auth, or I can remove it and just say request user ID as well. Both should work. Epic ID, for now I will hard code it because we are not creating the epics right now. And we do a request redirect back. Okay, this is a method available inside the controller which will help us to save this information and then go back to this form. Okay, so this is title, it's a bug, data is saved, and I'm back here. The reason I know the data is saved is the redirection work, and you can see we have, this is the title, story type, user ID, epic ID. And if I log out, is it John Doe or John? John at Amitav Roy. Okay, so I'll log in, story slash add story by John, and let's say it's an enhancement, and I hit save. Go to the database, stories table, and you can see user IDs too, story by John. So our basic form is working. And why don't we quickly also look at the listing? We had created the story dash index thing, right? I'll copy this markup here, save it. I don't need the form. I need the list of stories, right? So why don't we create a table? T head, okay, T R T H, and in that, let's say we have title, type, created at, then we have tbody, and we put this thing inside a for each loop. Okay, so the first thing is story title, then we have type, created at. What was the URL? I forgot. Is it stories? Yes, it is stories. All right, so we also now have the listing of the table with the stories, and why don't we put a link somewhere? Again, we will use the route name so that we don't fall into any trap when we are refactoring the URLs. So add story, and we get the form. Now, why don't we do one thing? Whenever the story is added, we will redirect route story. It's not named, so we'll name it story list. Let's see. So I'm going here, one more story by John, it's a bug, and we are here on the listing page. So yes, this is how our models, views, and controllers are talking to each other. They are, controller is getting the data, it is sending to the view, it is getting the data from the model, and we have a basic, setup in place where we can see a form which is saving the data, and then it is being displayed here. One thing very important to note is whenever you are creating a form, this CSRF field is very much required, because this protects you from something called as cross-site reference, where basically using this token, what I am validating is that I am a legitimate user sending a post request from the site itself, and not through a malformed, client, or a postman kind of a request. If I remove this and try to submit the form, okay, you will get an error which says page expired. Now, whenever you get a 419 page expired, do check if you have the token in place, and if not, then first add this and then ensure that your form works. Okay, if I hit okay, it is not there, so I need to refresh, filling up, save, and we are done. So thanks for watching, guys. Do subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you get a notification the moment I upload a video.